chance. They were born in bloody circumstance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. A voice from the underground, given room to breathe, not but be drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. To go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before.
Good evening and welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast in association with the Scottish Rugby blog. I'm Craig Manson. I'm here, your host. I'm your host for tonight on a slightly smaller pod tonight, and things will become very, very clear very, very soon on why we're having a smaller pod tonight and no Patreon tonight, but we'll talk about that in a second. And I've said tonight quite a lot because I'm just trying to work out how to introduce the man, the legend, the $6 million man, RoboCop himself. They can rebuild him. John Anderson. How the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay, mate. I'm okay. We're approaching a week after surgery. I'm now made of adamantium, I believe. But some people have told me it's cobalt, but I'm not going to believe them. It's clearly I'm just waiting for like the blades to come out my knuckles at some point. You know, obviously they told me they'd done that, but yeah, no, I'm getting there, mate. I'm okay. Healing day by day. It's nice and sore, but yeah, getting there.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. Just to give you an idea, we're having a slightly smaller pod, mainly because John's gone through a fairly major operation last week, and said he'd like to come back and have a natter and have a chat tonight. So what we've decided to do is just run a main pod, do maybe 40, 50 minutes in the chat and give him enough time to let the drugs wear off, or the drugs kick in, one of the two, and then we'll catch up with a specialist Patreon pod further down the line. And as we're talking about Patreon, you can subscribe to the Scottish Rugby podcast at www.patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Pod, where for £3 a month, that's the price of a grande mocha at Starbucks. It's somewhere around that area, John.
Well, it'd be more than that these days.
So is it more of a Greg's Bakery mocha then, John, or what we're talking about?
I reckon you would struggle to get a Greg's coffee for £3 a month these days. Aye.
Aye, well, it's an absolute bargain, and what you get is a little bit of extra content, quite a lot of extra content. Actually, we've started doing a few specialist ones, specialist podcasts as well. We had a question and answer session last week for our patrons. You also get access to a super secrets Facebook page where you can. There's quite a lot of chatting amongst there. There's a few groups chatting about different bits and pieces. So really worthwhile, and also you get to support ourselves, and hopefully you'll be happy with what we put out in our content that we put out.
Not to sound like absolute big dogs in that, Craig, but obviously if you're part of that Facebook group, you have direct access to the talent as well. So you can.
No, but Cammy's left, so
That's
I
true.
don't know.
Yeah. Okay, you have direct access to people who are trying to kid on to be the talent. No, it's a good group. It's a good wee micro group of like-minded souls, and there's a good debate in there quite a few times about various things. So get yourself over there. It's a good laugh.
Absolutely, and also get yourself over at the Scottish Rugby blog. There's lots of articles that have been written. Our friend of the pod, Sky Wilson, does a few pieces about player ratings, etc. We've also got many other. Sorry, John, you'll probably know better than I do at the moment about. We've got a few other contributors there now, new contributors. So as he races to find out,
I know.
so that I don't look stupid, that I don't know everyone's name, but
not at all. It's dynamic over there, so there's always there's comings and goings, and Rory does a great job of getting people involved in the writing side of things. And again, it's how I started with all this, and yourself, Craig. Yeah, there's something. I don't know how to describe it. There's something really exciting about that first time your name goes up against an article. And it goes up on the blog, and then people start commenting on it, or in my case, completely shredding it. And there's just something really exciting about that. And then, having that record, that thing that you've done is really cool. So it's definitely, if you've got any inclination of trying writing, get in touch with the blog and give it a bash, because, there's some fairly illustrious alumni of the blog, of course, Craig.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've got some very, very Jamie Lyle of our tellies these days has been one of the most prominent of them, and in the Scottish rugby scene, a few people have got.
I think I had a little bit of Gary Heatley, if I remember correctly, and
was that
Gary Heatley as well? Did he not put it?
Yeah. We've had him. With obviously, there's been a few other ones kicking about as well. But get yourself over to the blog if you fancy giving writing a wee bash. If you think you've got it, come over. And I can tell you from experience, Rory is the bloody nicest editor you'll ever meet in your life. So well worth it if you fancy trying it out. But yeah, it's very exciting over there.
Yeah, he does look after us, does Rory, I have to say. And wears some fantastic rugby tops, I have to say.
He has a fair selection.
He certainly does, yeah. So we'll move swiftly on to the news, and we're going to start a bit with quite a bit of Glasgow news. Murphy Walker has extended his stay at Scotstoun. He seems quite emotional about it all. He seems he's glad to be back. Alongside Murphy, we've had a new tight head, Finn Richardson, has signed up as well. Yep. A Scots qualified Finn Richardson, as they wanted to make sure we knew on the announcement. So a front row to be reckoned with, John.
I think there is some changes in the front row coming, and I think it was always going to be the case. I think for me, the interesting thing about Walker, I don't think everyone was aware necessarily of just how bad his injury troubles had been. And, people were starting to make a joke. He's more of a podcaster than a rugby player and things like that. And, I've read actually after the game, and obviously we'll talk about the game later, but the game at the weekend where he started in the front row and Franco done some mad stuff that we'll talk about. But he actually cried afterwards, and he said it was like making his debut all over again, because he's been through, I think it was like 522 days since he last played. It's very, very difficult, especially at that age. It's such a difficult thing So I think we're all glad he's signed up again, and let's see if we can get, keep him fit, because I think he is a prospect, and even yourself, I remember you getting a wee bit excited. I think it was a Glasgow Edinburgh game, and he played both sides of the scrum and didn't look out of place. Sorry, on either.
Yeah, it's a very, very rare thing nowadays, and it used to be, in the old days when I was just a whippersnapper, it was something that a lot of players could do. But nowadays, it's become very much a specialism. But to have someone like himself who can play both sides, you've got Finn Richardson coming in at tight head, you've got Suz coming in, Rory Sutherland coming in at loose head.
Yeah,
a real, along with Xander Fagerson there. You've got to. I think Glasgow's going to have a fantastic Scottish front row, because every single one of those players could be donning a Scotland shirt.
Yeah, and I think you'll also see, even to be out slightly, you'll see the same at hooker as well. Obviously, there's changes afoot at Scotstoun hooker-wise. Fraser Brown is off. George Turner's pretty much confirmed he'll be off as well to Japan. So you're looking at, that's a lot of experience to lose in the front row. Try machine Johnny Matthews can't do it all himself, no matter what Johnny says. So, and we have signed a couple of the younger guys, academy hookers have come through. Angus Fraser has probably looked the pick of them, but again, his darts don't look up to spec yet. That will take time. That's fine. But, bringing Grant Stewart back in, that looks already after the weekend, it was a decent signing, and he looks hungry to impress Franco Smith. So I think it's going to be quite a different front row for Glasgow next year, but not I think it'll be quite an upgrade, actually, because what we've had this year, in spite of things going really well, we've relied heavily on Xander Fagerson again. So to have other options could be really good.
Yeah, and definitely you're going to have, it just slowly seems to be adding. Now, okay, I've said this a long time on the pod, that you're starting to, Glasgow have lacked names. They've done it. They've been almost punching above their weight. I know they haven't been. They're doing very, very well. But
when you're talking about star names, that's what we've said.
But they're starting to see a little bit more of that coming through. So, it should be fantastic. Also, Sione Tuipulotu was on the BBC podcast this week, and he's rather taken by Franco Smith.
He is rather taken, and I think that should come as no surprise to anyone, given that I think Franco's pretty respected amongst that group of players. Some of the behind the scenes stuff has looked really, they've created a really good culture there. So I think Franco is very well liked. Very tough man as well, and you hear that after every game. You hear the players saying, games that they've won 40-point wins, and it's like, yeah, we'll be in on Monday going tearing over the mistakes we've made. But it's Tuipulotu. I mean, I think his game I think he always had that all-round game and that ability, but I think playing under Franco Smith has just given him the confidence to be everything that we see him as in the Scotland setup.
Yeah, definitely, and he was quite candid about his brother coming over, and just to go to slightly aside with Edinburgh at the moment, but from what I was lambasted on Twitter when I said that, that I thought I think he's going to be fantastic for Edinburgh, but I'm concerned about what it after the conversations that that you'd heard with Tuipulotu, that actually he wasn't that bothered about coming over to Scotland. He was going to have to take a lot, and I was worried about how much it has actually cost the SRU and Edinburgh to bring him over. And apparently, I was being I was slightly concerned about pathways, etc. But I wasn't pulling apart said player or saying that the Edinburgh were blocking pathways. I was just saying I was concerned about this, that, and the other. Certainly, from what we can hear from Sione Tuipulotu about his brother, Edinburgh are definitely going to get someone who is, let's just say, a little bit ferocious and wants to win.
Yeah, it looks like you've got a winner on your hands, and I think that I think the decision making that he's shown so far in terms of, he really backed himself as a young player to be like, I'm going to play for Australia. And in his view, and maybe that will change, playing for Australia was a bigger prestige for him than playing for Scotland. And that'll be something, if he does make Scotland international caps in the future, that's something he's going to have to deal with in the press, because the press will come after him for that. But I know certainly I have concerns as well. I think he's a player that looked a prospect until he went to Australia, and obviously it hasn't worked out for him there. And I'm sure there's more reasons than just, he's not hit the ground running there. But I agree with you, Craig. I think in terms of the cost value to bring a young player who realistically doesn't have much experience under his belt at a high level, to bring him over on what will be a significant package. Bear in mind, prior to his move to Australia, the SRU were trying to get him at Glasgow, and the rumours were 6 figures. Now, no other young player with the track record he's got would get anywhere near that unless they've got a surname that is recognisable to the powers that be. So he's lucky in that sense. I think he's the sort of character who want to prove himself against all that. So I think he will come good. I think you've got a cracking player on your hands. I don't think you've got a loyal player in your hands. And yeah. I hope I'm proven wrong with that. I'm making a sweeping assumption on what I've seen so far. But
come on now, it's not a Scottish Rugby podcast without a John Anderson.
Oh, I know, it took me almost 20 minutes. I'm losing my touch. I think you've got a good prospect there, and I think he will fit in. I think Edinburgh do need someone of his kind of game set that's going to fit into that midfield with what you have just now.
Well, I'm sure we'll cover that, with the game that we're going to talk about. Yeah. But just to take a slightly bring us back into the lane that we were talking about earlier about Glasgow. The Glasgow Player of the Season shortlist has been announced, and we've got Xander Fagerson, George Horn, Johnny Matthews, Tom Jordan, Stafford McDowell. Actually, you can just say Stafford, and I think most people know exactly who you're
there's not
about.
many Staffords.
No, exactly. Josh Mackay and Henko Venter. There's when we talk about star power, there's a fairly decent group of players.
Yes,
to be understated. What's your thoughts? Who do you think is going to be the Player of the Year?
So, I think it's a very interesting one. I think there's maybe 2 tiers within that group. I think Henko Venter's had a very good late season. I think he's kind of come into the running based on his form. Laterally, I think he has had a very good season, but I don't necessarily think it's at the level of some of the other guys. Johnny Matthews, how crazy is it that you're saying the league's top scorer and the Haaland of rugby is not Player of the Year, but he's not Player of the Year. He just scored a ton of tries and has had a good season. We're then looking at that kind of upper tier, and I think you're looking at Stafford McDowell. For me, he's played every minute of Glasgow season, has captained the team, has made a breakthrough again with Scotland. Got in the park against Ireland. I think he's just becoming the player that we all envisaged years back, and it's only now that he's doing it, and we're all just delighted that he's doing it. He's an incredible example of why we should never be disregarding players who have shown talent on their way up. If they've got the attitude and they've got the work rate, if it's not working out, let's figure out how to make it work out, because what a redemption story. Let's look at the other one, as we've talked so many times on here. George Horn, yet again, brilliant season for Glasgow. But I think it will be Stafford McDowell, right? But I would love it to be Josh Mackay, and that's the one I've not talked about here. Josh Mackay, he's a player that, when Josh Mackay arrived at Glasgow, everyone was quite excited because he was a bit of a name, if you will. he was one of those guys that people recognised from Super Rugby, but he's the sort of player who just doesn't seem to do much wrong. He's just consistency all the time and has his X Factor moments, but he's just a very, very solid, good player. He's been a brilliant, brilliant servant to the club this year, and I would love to see him recognised for that.
Yeah, it'd be good to probably, maybe get player of the season or something like that.
I think he might be in with a shout with that. I think maybe some of the younger boys might be sniffing at that award as well, because there's a few, certainly a few of the your Williamsons and your the back row boys have had breakthrough seasons, which again is great for the talent in Scottish rugby.
Right, so it's Williamson's the lock, isn't it?
Williamson's the lock, yeah.
He's had a fantastic. He's looked an absolute.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to use the word, but he's a Peter O'Mahony, that's for sure. He's got a bit of grit about him.
He certainly doesn't take a backward step.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And I think the staff naissance is complete. I think I think Stafford McDowell will get this because he has had a phenomenal season, and I think we'll definitely see him do well. We'll move on to Edinburgh. We've got a few things going on with Edinburgh, unless you've not got anything else to say.
Yeah, no. I think my hip's getting no. No, let's go. No, all good.
So we've got a few bits and pieces with Edinburgh. Obviously, Scott Steele has announced his retirement. A little bit like yourself, John. He's had his hip issues. Came on board this year and unfortunately hasn't played for Edinburgh due to that, and he's decided to call time on his career. A real disappointment, not only for us but for Scott, definitely.
Oh, well, absolutely. Age 31, retiring is tough, but hip injuries are, we're going to see this more and more. You're hearing about players who are currently playing through chronic hip pain, and unfortunately, the place we're at, where most of these need replacing or need, surgery to give you any sort of quality of life, normally involves a prosthetic or a prosthesis or whatever they're called. Basically, a lump of metal in your hip.
All right.
And usually at that point, that is not conducive to continuing a rugby union career at any level. And you've seen that. Obviously, there's the Andy Murray story and him being the first kind of upper level sportsman to return to his game and be able to compete. But anyone who's watched Murray, and best respect in the world, I love the guy to bits, but he's not the same player. He's nowhere near the same player. He's a shadow of what he was. Mm. So even if there was an option, I don't think we're in that place where hips can be, it's something you need to manage until the point you can't manage anymore. And I think, unfortunately, Scott Steele's got there wee bit earlier, but that's the impact of rugby union on your body. And, there's all manner of wild and wonderful things that can happen out there that you don't even know about that will creep up on you. And before you know it, you are requiring hip surgery. So it's a shame for him, but I think he can look back in his career with pride. Obviously he's represented Scotland
at 9 and 7.
9 is exactly right. Not many scrum halves can say that. So that's
the divide.
That's him. Basically he has got his after dinner speaking sorted for the rest of his life now, based on that one anecdote alone. So, but no, good on him, good career. And shame to see him go, because I think he's a good. I think he was I was worried when Edinburgh signed him, because I thought he would up the level of scrum half that you had, and it's just a shame it hasn't worked out for him.
Absolutely. Talking of total opposites, bad news into good news. Wes Goosen extends for another year after a phenomenal season for Wes, and we'll come back to him, I guess, in a minute. He's had a phenomenal one. Nathan Sweeney has also extended his stay. But the big thing is, for me, one of the best pieces of news is Ross McCann has joined Edinburgh for 2 years.
Yeah, seen that.
From the GB Sevens.
Yep.
ducked in and out. He got his debut against the Dragons for Edinburgh, but I think that's a fantastic piece of business. For someone who's coming from GB Sevens, look at Mark Bennett, look at George Horn, look at Pete Horn. Everyone who's played Sevens has developed under that sort of exposure.
That's the thing, and I think there has to be enough identifiable crossover when you're, a lot of players do grow up and you play 15s and you play 7s, and you kind of learn how to play both, and then you specialise in one. And 7 specialists tends to be elements of 15s that if you haven't played 15s before at any great level, you do have a bit of work to do and a bit of learning. That said, if you're in a certain position, it makes it that damn bit easier to learn. And the individual skills you learn in 7s, like your one-up tackling, the ability to jackal and one-up ruck, your pace, obviously pace is a no-brainer. But because there's 70s, that ability to pass quite long distances quite often, shipping the ball with accuracy, that is a brilliant breeding ground for your basic skills that you need as a rugby union player. You don't see many 7s players missing one-up tackles when they play 15s.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's just because you just can't, because it's a try if you're doing 7s. So I think it's a great signing. I think he's shown enough that he could be a huge addition to that Edinburgh team next year.
Yeah, definitely. You just need to look at a Glasgow player of large recognition, and that is Ali Miller. He was a big 7s player, and if you're looking for someone who's not only a very good flanker, but he sometimes plays a number 8, if I'm right in saying that he's got a ton of pace on him.
Woo! Wheels.
Absolutely
Brilliant.
So and also Edinburgh have also put up their nominees for Player of the Season. But what's pleasing for myself and hopefully others is that not only have they put up the men's nominees, but they've also put the women's nominees up.
Women's nominees as well. That's very, very good, actually.
Absolutely. So, with the men's nominees are obviously Wes Goosen, Jamie Ritchie, Mish, Matt Curry, who we'll talk about in a second, and Big Bill Mata. Matt Curry, I think, is one for. He's really had a breakthrough season this season. I'm really appreciative of what he does for Edinburgh, and I think he's going to be a great servant for Edinburgh, hopefully, if he stays. But really, for me, I think if it's not Big Bill, it's got to be Wes Goosen.
I totally agree with you, mate. I think that's spot on.
Yeah. And the women's nominees, we've got Sarah Denham, who was obviously captain of the inaugural Edinburgh team. Alex Stewart not only earned a Scotland call-up, but started all of the Six Nations games at the ripe old age of 19. Someone who has just performed incredibly well. Meryl Gunnarsson, back, a real hard-working back rower. Kieran Bell, obviously a phenomenal winger, and also earned her Scotland call-up as well. And I have to leave this wonderful person to last, Molly Pullman, who is the tight head prop for Edinburgh, and I've had the very, very great pleasure of coaching Molly and being involved in some of what she did, and she is a phenomenal player. You'll see her playing for Scotland very, very soon. Yeah. So congratulations to all of these players who have had the opportunity or have had the season that has earned them a nomination. Just a fantastic. Some good news out of both Edinburgh and Glasgow.
Yeah, it's been a good news cycle mostly, which is good.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, however, is poke Glasgow a little bit and say, come on now, we're all on the same page here. Where's your women's nominees?
Yeah, I'm surprised at that, actually. I'm surprised at that. That's a very good point. And I think maybe get on to Glasgow Warriors on their socials and get them a wee prompt on that topic.
Absolutely. So, well, that's us got the news out of the way. It's only taken us half an hour, John. So
that's all right. Busy time.
So we've got 10 minutes each, or 7.5 minutes each to talk about these two games.
Yep. All right.
So we'll maybe leave Glasgow to the end because it was quite a game. We'll start off with Edinburgh. Edinburgh 40, Zebri 14. Tries from Ewan Ashman, 2 tries from Ewan Ashman in his player of the match winning game. WP Nell took one. Javan Sebastian took one. Chris Dean, who I always, when I was young, when I first started following Edinburgh quite a lot, thought his name was Christine, but actually it's Chris Dean. So Chris Dean took a try, and also Benji Vellacott took one as well. You've watched the game, John. What's your thoughts on this?
Do you know?
5-pointer, finally.
It's a 5-pointer, and I think that's what you take away from it. And I think that's all you can take away from it. Other than there's a couple of really. So I think the first half for me was a bit turgid, and I was a wee bit concerned about what I was seeing. I never really felt like Edinburgh were in trouble, but I didn't really feel they were in control, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then Ben Vellacott really came on and changed everything. Just, I think Ben Vellacott's the perfect 9 for Edinburgh. He is pace, decision making, just everything that Edinburgh's backs at times have lacked. Just that ability to back themselves and go. And I think you're seeing that with, Wes Goosens having a phenomenal season and was great the other night. But I think Vellacott changed the style of play for Edinburgh and changed what they were doing. And that's why you see a comfortable numerical win. But also, it could have been more. So I think Edinburgh will be looking, they'll probably be looking at it and thinking, well, we managed to do that to them in the second period. Why are we? What happened? What's going wrong? What's not clicking in that first, part of the battle? But I think, yeah, it's a bonus point. That's really it. At this stage of the season, you take them how you get them, and you don't care. You're trying to build some momentum, yes, but you're trying to get there first.
Yeah, very much so. And I think what a lot of Edinburgh fans are talking about, certainly myself, certainly a few of my friends that used to stand with me on the Lothian stand. The issue we have and the question mark is constantly, why isn't Benji Vellacott starting?
Yeah.
Funnily enough, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but yeah, he starts this weekend. But the biggest disappointment, I think, for me, apart from for some reason we seem to have lost our attacking flair within our backs, is Ali Price. I think Ali Price, just for some reason, I don't know if he just doesn't seem to fit with Glasgow, with Edinburgh. Sorry, easy mistake to make. And it just, him and Healy, just when Ben, every time you're guaranteed when Ben Vellacott comes on, we kick into another gear.
Yep.
And I just think, I don't know whether it's, obviously we've talked about this over and over again. I won't bore everybody, but Ali Price was, if you remember now, I've forgotten the other scrum half's name. Is it Grayson? Oh, what was the lad that went off to London Scottish?
Grayson Hart.
Grayson Hart. Him and Grayson Hart were the boys at Glasgow. They were coming through. They were going to be these revolutionary 9s that were going to. And Ali Price was the one that was the lunatic. He was the George Horton.
He was the crazy one. And anyone who knows any of Grayson Hart's published work afterwards knows that Ali Price looks like a John Smith who paints his shed at the weekend compared to Grayson Hart.
But it's really, and I don't know where that Ali Price has gone, because he certainly has. Okay, fair enough. he's, I'm not going to talk about fatherhood because I don't think that really changes you as a player as such. It maybe gives you a different perspective,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I think it's more the fact of he has slowed down, and I don't know whether this is a Townsend thing that's knocked the corners off him or something like that. But it just seems that he's just not clicking at all.
It's what we've said for
Yeah.
5 years now in the podcast, that Price, and we do have an obsession with speed at scrum half.
Yes.
We do, as Scottish fans, we do. But I think it's based on the fact that what you see when you've got that, it doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily about the pace around the park. It's about the speed of ball and the ability to generate that quicker ball and get the ball away. Ali Price, for many a season now, has spent valuable seconds pointing and directing and tapping his legs and, doing a wee jig here and there before then box kicking inevitably. And it's really, really frustrating because the backs, both Glasgow and Edinburgh have, and Scotland have, the backs, you give them quick ball, they'll cut any team in the world to shreds with no problems. The talent they have out there is there. It is on the top level. But if your 9 isn't creating that ball and getting the ball away, if the ball's presented, you see it at Glasgow, the ball's there, it goes.
Yeah.
Like it's just, there's one movement. Whereas with Price, it's there. And as I said, he donders about and stuff. And I think it is a coached behaviour. Certainly after the Lions, he seemed to be a bit more. And I mean, let's not forget, he went to the Lions tour. A lot of people were surprised he made the Lions tour, but then he started all three tests.
He had a good Lions tour. Yeah,
Great
absolutely.
Tour. And I was surprised he stayed in Scotland because actually I think Price would get all the love in the world for his style of play if he went to France.
Yeah.
And he would get the big bucks that would recognise that. I think staying at Edinburgh, and I'm going to say it, and here we go, controversial take number 2. You can mark this, 3742. Controversial take number 2. I think Price is a coward for staying in Scotland. I think, and I said this about a number of players previously that have stayed at both Edinburgh and Glasgow. I think they're cowards who are staying within their bubble and they lose out because of it. Yes, they got looked after, but if you're an older player with no international aspirations, if you go to France, you'll get looked after because they've got you as an asset and they will look after you. If you're delivering, they'll look after you. And Price could have went to France 3 seasons ago, or 2 seasons ago after Lions tour or whatever, and made mega bucks and had the world salivating at his play in France. Because he's got exactly what he needs. Massive pack.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, that's fair, and I understand exactly what you're saying. What I kind of scratch my head at is the fact of, and I'm a fairly basic rugby player. I'm a fairly basic rugby coach. And as far as I'm concerned, you have a class pack who absolutely punch holes in people.
Yep.
The only way to exploit that class pack punching holes in people is to have quick ruck speed.
Yep.
So that when you've got the 1, 2, maybe 3 forward punches, especially if you're in a 22, then your 9 absolutely whips that ball out and gets it out to this out past your 10, and with and quite clearly with a 10 as that's really coming through and showing his skills as Healy is.
Yeah.
He's taken some time to settle with Edinburgh, but but if you watch him with Ben Velicott, he clicks.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm struggling to see it with Ali Price at the moment.
I don't think Price necessarily is working with Healy very well, and the problem you've got then is that it's not a case of Price is not in a position in his career now where he can be, I'm the 9 and the 10 needs to work with me.
Yeah.
Yes, they should always be trying to work together, but Healy's the coming man. He's the rising star at 10. And I think at the weekend he showed his full repertoire as well. you know, that the offload, the break down the sorry, not the offload, the break down the corner and then the bump, and then the offload for the first try. Great work. You know, he's shown a lot of talent there and a lot of skill. So no, I think Healy's going to be the person that dictates what Edinburgh do at 9. And I just hope maybe Gregor, in his eternal wisdom for Scotland, allows Russell to dictate the type of 9 he needs, which has varied over his career. But I think the way Russell's playing nowadays, he doesn't need, you know, we can take the leash off. We can take the shackles can be removed. He can be let loose.
Yeah, and I think also with Finn though, the big difference between Finn and Healy and also any other 10 that plays in Scotland is that Finn doesn't need an all singing, all dancing 9 who will throw the ball out. He doesn't need quick ball.
No.
Because his brain is probably six moves ahead of everyone else anyway. And that's maybe hidden Ali Price for the last few years in a Scotland shirt. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I think he's had a phenomenal career in the Scotland shirt, so I'm not going to...
This is it. We're not talking about a person that we think's overachieved. Far from it. I think Ali Price has achieved so well in his career, and I think he's a deserved British and Irish Lion.
Oh, yeah.
Deserved Test starter. You know, he's had a great career. It's just hard to watch what we're seeing just now.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So Edinburgh take 5 points. They've got themselves up to 5th or 6th at the moment. Yep. In the league, which is a bit of a breather. But we'll talk about just before the end of this pod. We'll talk about what's up next for Edinburgh and where we're going to go. We move down to South Africa. Glasgow 34, Bulls 40. Wow, what a game of two halves!
Yeah, like if you were to, you know, it's always the cliche. It's a game of two halves, but if you wanted to put a dictionary definition next to it, this game was it. Wow. I mean, I still don't really understand what happened. Like, you know, Glasgow started so well. You know, scoring the first try, Fagerson showing, you know, yes, against backs, right, and a back row forward that he dunted off, but showing immense power to score his try, getting over the line, and Glasgow take the lead. We then see Kyle Steyn having probably his first brain fart of the season, really.
Yeah.
A tip tackle that was never needed, never on, and yeah, we've all been there, right? You've got a boy, you're desperate to make an impression. You want to drive the boy into the ground as hard as you can, and you just get a bit over exuberant, and you can't get away with it. It's not safe. The way the boy landed, there was never any danger to him in that sense. But by the letter of the law, it's a yellow card.
I don't want to be. I'm not, and this isn't me trying to be rude against Kyle Steyn, because I'm not. I'm right in saying he's South African, isn't he?
He's a South African native, yeah.
So you got a South African against South African in South Africa.
Yeah.
He's going to try his best to show everybody exactly how big and strong a player is he.
Captain in Glasgow, you know, you're right. It's circumstances are dictating. He's wanting to go out and smash people.
Absolutely.
And it got overexcited. So the Bulls, as the Bulls do, very good side, start to put pressure on. Immediately capitalise on that. They take the lead. They dominate Glasgow. Glasgow, architects of their own downfall. Mistakes, you know, overplaying at times, not really seeming to have a plan B. And the Bulls go in at half-time, absolutely all dominant. It's
14 points in the lead. It looks like the game is very much going their way.
And then straight after half-time, they score again, which then... Everyone, including myself, I was having a chat with one of my friends at the time about what I was sitting post-operative in the hospital bed watching this on my tablet, and the chat I was having with one of my friends, I was like, I'm just trying to find ways to kind of make myself feel a bit better, and he was like, don't watch the Glasgow game. And I was like, sadly, I already am. And this is a bit of a shambles, isn't it? Because we looked disjointed. We looked knackered,
Yeah.
really knackered. And again, we've seen that with teams going over there. Altitude plays its part.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's get on to the positive, right?
Yeah, well, it turned around, and I'm going to, we've got trials. Kyle Steen makes it up to everybody by putting a try over. Seb Cancelleri, nice to see him grabbing another try.
Yeah, back amongst the meat.
And then John Anderson. Oh, Donkey Weir. After all the person, as usual, as he has done for Edinburgh on a regular basis, pulls out a wholly, how can I put it?
Unexpected.
Well, you say that, but he saved Edinburgh's backside in many a time at the last minute, and to pull out a try at the end there, to make sure that Glasgow go away with 2 bonus points, which keep them in the running to the top of the table.
Well, not just the try, of course, Craig, because he scored the try, which was a peach in itself. But when the Bulls then managed to get a penalty and eke out, an 9-point lead, 8-point lead.
Yes,
So
8-point
lead. Glasgow get one last shot at the goal from around 50 metres. Up steps Donkey Weir, straight between the posts. Thank you. That with 2 bonus points. Like, what a performance the boy had.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about coming to the fore. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, a real fantastic finish for them. It's you're almost, I'm not a one for celebrating losses, but that's got to be as close to, that's almost the same as Edinburgh when we lost. I think I'm trying to think who we lost against, but we lost by a point down in South Africa. I think it's you have to come away from that. Yeah. The big difference is that Glasgow came away with bonus points, and Edinburgh didn't. So
everything we were up against and are showing up to that point. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I think if you'd asked any Glasgow fan prior to it, they would have taken 2 bonus points.
Yeah.
If you asked them at the start of the game, after the Fagerson try, I think everyone was keen. If you had asked them after the Duncan Weir try, I think people were thinking, let's go and win this, because the Bulls had absolutely bottled it at this point.
And Glasgow definitely have the ability to do something like that. Unfortunately, they just didn't manage against Harlequins, and that's just the slight wee thing. You think they're going to do it, and unfortunately, they just don't get there.
That last bit. But yeah, 2 points gained. Massive game to come up this weekend, which we'll just quickly preview as well. But
absolutely,
good stuff, and a great watch. If you haven't seen it, get it on catch up. It's well worth it. It's very entertaining.
Absolutely. So, and just a small aside, what I will say is that we talk about Scotland and their number 8s and their back row players, but and you're going to laugh here in a minute, John. But I'm going to say something in all seriousness here, whether you like it or not.
Go for it.
But obviously, we've got the old Australian. We've got the other players that are continually playing for Scotland, but the forgotten man, I feel sometimes, is Matt Fagerson.
I think so.
And I think him, and I'm going to say it here, Magnus Bradbury, the pair of them are when Magnus Bradbury's on song, and also the work he's doing down at Bristol, which he's now going to bring back to Edinburgh. I really do think that our number 8, we certainly don't have a number 8 crisis. They may not be at Josh Strauss levels just yet, but certainly they're strong and big boys, and they will do a good job for us.
I think it's just down to how we use our number 8s, and I think you're absolutely right. I think Matt Fagerson is underrated as a 6'8". He always has been. He's been throughout his career. He's always been underrated, and he's been too small. He's been this. He's been that. But what a player! Like he's back to your typical. You never get less than 7 out of 10 out of him. He's just Mr. Consistency, and I agree. Bradbury, for me, if Bradbury can bring what he's doing down at Bristol to Edinburgh, that's fine. Like, I think you guys have got your Messiah back at that point, and you're happy.
Oh, I think we've won a watch if he comes back and plays as he's been playing.
If he plays anywhere near what he's playing at Bristol, you have won a watch, right? If he can finally translate this to international level, I'll happily eat my socks on the podcast, because I just think he's one of those players that step up to the international camp is just not. It's not worked yet. I'm not saying it won't, but it's not worked yet. So let's get Bradbury back to Scotland and see what he can do. But
yeah, absolutely. Because I think
you're onto something there.
Yeah, I think the thing is what we have. If anyone has, like, again, I keep pushing them, and I shouldn't, because they're a different podcast. But he was on the BBC podcast, and he did admit that he'd gone walkabout, and he really struggled with it. But please don't forget that he did score a try in that England Calcutta Cup match. So anyway, we'll move on. So just before we finish, a wee preview. Next up, we've got Glasgow v Emirate Lions at home, which should be a Glasgow win, John.
Well, it's in South Africa, Craig. So,
sorry, it is. Yeah, sorry, my mistake. Yeah.
So, I mean, Glasgow will fancy their chances, right? But we know how hard it is to play the South African teams in South Africa. Obviously, a week at altitude will have done them great benefit for coming back down to Joburg. But the Lions are a tough team on their own patch. So I'm wanting a win, obviously. I'm expecting a very big Glasgow performance. But I'm not. I think it's a very tough one to call. I think it'll be a tight game.
A big win gives you a home semi-final, surely, yeah?
Big win gives us home semi and potentially home final, given if we were to 5-point both of these games coming up, Lions and then Zebra at home, then the titles, the number one seeding is ours. So what more motivation do you need?
Yeah, absolutely. And next up for Edinburgh, well, Munster travel over to the Hive, and they've announced the team already for Edinburgh, because obviously it's tomorrow night.
Yep.
Those of you that are listening on catch up, we record this on a Thursday, and Friday night is tomorrow, as it always is. Velikot starts.
Yep.
Looking at the team, it's all the big guns are out. So it's going to be it's a sellout Hive. It always is phenomenal fun when Munster come to town. I've been there a couple of times when Munster have been in, especially when they're in the Hive. There's like they almost make it a home game with the amount of singing and the amount of.
They certainly do, don't they?
So we will wait and see how we go. I actually have Edinburgh for the win. Now I know that everyone is saying no, they've got no chance. But I think there's a little bit of something coming. And hopefully it's going to come on Friday night, and we're going to see, because if we continue on our upward trajectory, there may be an all Scottish semi-final, John.
Well, this is it. Yes, of course. So that to transpire. Oh, how interesting would that be?
Especially, sorry, just to be choked in my pint there. Especially if the SRU realise it's a all Scottish final, and they think to themselves, we could sell 40,000 tickets for this. We're going to move it to Murrayfield.
This is the thing. Like, I think they have to be very, very careful what they do in that space, because
commercialism and prosperity over home support. What do you think? Because Edinburgh get absolutely shafted on this every single time when it comes to 1872 Cup time. So, John, what are they going to do?
Well, you go over to the big house. It must be difficult, because all that travel and it's not like you don't know the dressing rooms after all, and you only played in the stadium for how much? No, I know it's neither team's home. I agree with that, right?
Yeah. A neutral venue for you, John. A neutral venue for Glasgow v Edinburgh in the semi-final.
Let's just screw it, right? And we'll go and we'll play it properly neutral. I don't know. We'll go. Let's go. Let's get a Celtic Park again, right? And we'll go there. And we'll do 40,000 tickets in Celtic Park. I think that'll be a good atmosphere.
I think we should be over at Falkirk. Right in the
Falkirk,
middle.
I did it. The Broadwood. Very good. Aye. Well,
So we're hopefully going to have a Glasgow win and an Edinburgh win at the weekend. So
that's
it
what
might
we're aiming for, pal.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking some time out of your recuperation to come on tonight. It's been really good to have you back, and it's great to see you in some actually pretty good health from what you've gone through. So maybe it's just the drugs, but we're going to try and put together a nice wee Patreon special. We're trying to put something together for the weekend so that we can maybe put something out for our patrons. This has been a smaller podcast today just because of a mixture of numbers and also John coming along and keeping it a little bit shorter for John to make sure he gets tucked up and looked after and a wee towel to the brow and make sure he's looking all right.
Well, I've been absolutely pouring with sweat throughout this, so I've got my wee crutches here. I'm just going to go and nip off and get myself sorted. So,
right, John, it's been fantastic to have you here. Thanks so much for taking the time and coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And John, a goodbye from John.
Goodbye.
And a goodbye from me. And thanks so much. And we'll see you next week. Cheers.